Thank you, one and all. Welcome back to our first stop on MedTech's tour of 5 innovation regions across upstate New York. For those of you who were with us for the first hour, you know that we're focusing on the North Country and the Capital Region. We just spent about an hour really with kind of a 10,000-foot view of the region, its strategic vision, its strengths, a bit about some other technologies, particularly nanotechnology and also workforce development in the program. We'd like to turn our focus now to a deeper dive into some of the specific life science assets and resources in the region. And we've assembled a terrific group of folk for this roundtable discussion. We're going to spend some time hoping that you get to know them and their programs a little bit more, and perhaps get a better sense of what the life sciences industry in the Capital Region and the North Country look like. So let me go around in no particular order and just introduce the folks. We have with us Kim Seabury. She's the Senior Vice President for Information Technology at AngioDynamics, a global provider of industry-leading medical devices, excuse me, used around the world for the treatment of cancer and peripheral vascular disease. AngioDynamics had its birthplace in Queensbury, New York, is now headquartered in Latham, and also does some manufacturing in Queensbury. Also from the industry side of the segment, I'm pleased to have Jamie Grabowski, the Vice President for Portfolio and Sourcing at Curia, formerly AMRI, an end-to-end CDMO built to help pharmaceutical and biotech companies improve patient lives. Stephanie Dosiek, the Director of the Biomedical Acceleration and Commercialization Center at Albany Medical Center, the region's only academic medical center. And the BACC, as it's commonly known at Albany Med, is a dynamic initiative focused on driving biodiscovery through innovation, collaboration, and entrepreneurial engagement. Lenn Johns is the founding dean of the Lewis School of Health Sciences at Clarkson University, a private national research university and a leader in technological education, located in Potsdam, New York, with facilities in Schenectady and in Beacon. Kesh is the Vice President of Research and Economic Development at SUNY University at Albany, the premier public research university in the Capital Region. And last but certainly not least, Brett Orzechowski, the Program Director of the Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Program at the Lally School of Business at RPI, America's oldest technological research university, located in Troy. I think I'll start with you, Brett, even though I introduced you last, because I'm curious about the really innovative program at RPI and at the Lally School of Business in life science entrepreneurship. And I'm hoping you can talk a little bit about the program, kind of where it comes from and what its purposes are.
Yeah, thanks, Wynn. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me today. I always, whenever I hear that RPI is the oldest, I always joke around and say, let's throw a B in front of there and look ahead, going forward. And maybe this program is somewhat of that catalyst regionally, nationally and globally. I think the intention was starting 2 other entrepreneurial programs on other campuses in the Northeast. I think this one really spoke to me and perhaps the region because of all the assets that Rensselaer has. The fact that it's also housed within the Lally School of Management signals more of an emphasis on entrepreneurship, which when speaking with high global researchers and other folks within the region, that business acumen is something that's desired now by life sciences companies. If you could blend the science or engineering background with the business acumen, you have not only stronger graduates, but perhaps stronger ideas and stronger startups that are coming out of this environment. This was funded. It's funded partially by Empire State Development. Rensselaer is one of 5 universities, institutes in upstate New York, along with Cornell, UB, RIT, and Stony Brook. to be the recipient of a little bit of infusion of support for life sciences entrepreneurship. So just looking ahead, just to keep it brief, to get the other panels as well, I've been here about 6 months to set up the environment within the MBA program, getting an idea of what's out there regionally. I know when in our preliminary conversation a couple months ago, I scraped all the data, and this is where I started getting really excited to see where life sciences companies are regionally, not only here within the Hudson Valley and points north. And I found more than 400 that are self-selected, classified within NAICS codes that focus on life sciences. And to me, that also signals as a way to maybe start working together with other universities across the region to see how we can start connecting the dots, because a true ecosystem really fosters that collaboration. So I've only reached out, I'm only one man, I've only reached out to about 10 of those 400, everything from large scale. I know some folks are joining us today on the video, to just startups, within a year of starting or incubation. So for ecosystems to truly work, I think collaboration is needed, and to find those assets is going to be important over the next 6 months. And that's what we're trying to do with this program.
Terrific. Brett, thank you. Speaking of incubating and commercialization, Stephanie, I'm looking at you at the BACC at Albany Medical Center, and wondering if you can describe a bit your program and how an academic medical center becomes involved in the commercialization of research and other modalities.
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. So, thank you so much for having me. And I'll put a little plug in. I did my undergrad in the North Country up at St. Lawrence University. So I'm a huge fan of the whole region. And it actually ties quite nicely in with Albany Med. So Albany Medical College is part of the Albany Med Health System, which now incorporates 25 counties from North Country through Capital Region, even parts of Vermont and Western Massachusetts. So the area that I serve at the BACC as part of Albany Med encompasses this whole region. And in terms of what we offer, so the BACC is a NISTAR certified business incubator. So we do get funding through New York State, and we are focused in biotech. And we have sort of 3 parts to our main goals and our main mission of what we do. The first is educational programming. A lot of that is building the pipeline and then educating that pipeline. So getting students while they're in undergrad, we partner with Union and RPI and sometimes UB and a bunch of other schools for our clinical immersion program. And then we also offer boot camps and entrepreneurial education seminars to help people to take their idea and make it a reality. And then the other part that we do, the other sort of 2 parts, is we help startups. So one of the big things that we do is we connect startups in the life sciences with Albany Medical College in whatever form is necessary. Sometimes that's finding a researcher to work with in a BSL-3 lab, for example, which is a pretty rare thing to find. Other times it's finding someone to help with a clinical trial or something like that, and helping with funding in that regards. And then the third thing of what we do is we are sort of the tech transfer arm for Albany Medical College. And so we help the employees of Albany Med Health System who have ideas. We help them with patenting and licensing and all that sort of stuff. So that's sort of the big picture. When the BACC was first created, which was back in 2014 was when the idea was born. 2015 is when it came into being. There definitely was a clear push from lots of different sides to say that there is an obvious need for biotech incubation in this region because we have so many universities, we have so many partners, we have so much biotech and medtech and so much potential. Someone needs to step up, and that obvious person group that needed to step up was Albany Medical College. So at the time, Jim Barba, who was the CEO, founded the BACC, and the BACC basically continues to kind of fill that role. But we also recognize it's really important to collaborate with everybody else. So we are very much part of the whole entrepreneurial ecosystem. We are friendly with all of the regional colleges and universities, and we're happy to partner in any way that really makes sense. We like to say yes at the BACC, so reach out to me.
Terrific. Listen, speaking of an institution that supports both research and has a deep dive into the entrepreneurial world, always makes me think, of course, of Clarkson. And Lenn, I'm hoping that you can talk a little bit about kind of Clarkson's unique approach to both research and entrepreneurship, something that certainly is a standout in the North Country. But of course, as I mentioned earlier, you've got a graduate program and facilities as well in the Capital Region. And I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about all of that.
Yeah, I would say on the entrepreneurship avenue, one of the things that we've done recently, about a year ago, is within the university, we actually we're serving the Lewis School of Health Sciences is serving a little bit as a shell company for some biotech companies. And so part of that, the name of the primary company is called ICOR Health Sciences. And then what they're doing is being able to work through the university to apply for grants in that sense, working with our students, both in the health sciences, the engineering, the biology, and also I just came across my desk, they're looking for some interns in business from our business school as well, to look at business and marketing of some of the types of things. So they're really integrating into the university and showing, providing examples for our students, real life examples for our students of what entrepreneurship is, right, and what engineering is, and what science is, and what marketing and business and the whole piece, which is good. And I think they're also taking on some doctoral students, and then they're also actually bringing on 4 additional companies under their shell in the coming year to expand upon the research pieces that they're doing. And so some of the things that hopefully does for the North Country is bring in some high tech companies with some great ideas, increase socioeconomics up here, and also provide some great opportunities for our students, right, to get some education, to get some real life education up here while they're here at Clarkson, not having to go somewhere else to get that. I would say the second avenue, the second thing we're doing, in the Lewis School, is really focusing on working for workforce development, specifically within healthcare. So we're working right now with 2 different healthcare institutions, looking at what are their needs, what are our needs, how can we partner to make a win-win situation. And as we describe a win-win situation for those partnerships, it really comes down to 4 wins, right? So it has to be a win for our students, a win for the university, a win for the other institution, and then a win for patients, right? And healthcare, the process of healthcare. So that's kind of the metric that we're looking at. And hopefully within about maybe 3 months, we're going to have some really fun news that we can share. And some of it is looking at some of what I just talked about, but also some of it is looking at not only workforce, but infrastructure, right? How do we develop infrastructure in a rural setting that has those 4 wins again? And again, we're going to have some fun news out here in a couple of months, probably.
So speaking of some fun news, I'm not sure necessarily, Kesh, that you would describe it as fun news. I hope you would. You're relatively new at UAlbany, really filling some big shoes in the space of Vice President for Research and Economic Development. That's a slightly unusual kind of cross connection, and I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about it and what it means at a large public research institution like Albany. Where do you see Albany fitting into this larger life sciences mix?
Well, thank you very much, Ben. Good to hear from all of you. So I think that if you look across the country, more and more universities have been actually converting the Vice President for Research or Vice Chancellor for Research and adding the title of Economic Development as a part of that. And I'm seeing a lot of the universities do that. And I think it's partly due to the realization that universities are not doing enough to take scientific discoveries and helping translate that into companies. And we all know that certain regions do it quite well, but generally universities, sort of drop the ball at some point. And unless the faculty members are very entrepreneurial in nature, very rarely companies eventually successfully go out. I think that that needs to change, and I'm seeing that happen in different parts of the country. So I think it was the same reason why Albany decided to elevate my position to include economic development is simply because Albany in the last 4 or 5 years have really started seeing itself as the state university that can be a glue to the capital region in translation work and helping the economy in this area. And I must say that there have been quite a few successful programs that Albany has done in the last 5 years to showcase that this interest is more than just interest, but something interesting is happening. One of them is a brand new building that was built in our campus called the eTech Center. It's a big $180 million facility that hosts a new incubator space in the ground floor. We also have an office of the New York State SBA in the ground floor of the building, and that's in fact the eTech word itself comes from the technology center. That's how the eTech word came from. Anyway, this building also has atmospheric research and engineering and chemistry in that building as well, and also the College of Homeland Security. And all of these programs have been extremely successful in building a new culture on campus in entrepreneurship. A sign of that is the fact that we actually host the Nice Stars Hotspot program that allows us to have two entrepreneurs in residence who's now helping not only our faculty members but also startup companies in the region, giving them advice and all the way from proposal writing to finding the angel investment and seed capital to grow their program. We also coordinate the 518 program for the whole region. In addition, through my office, we also do the New York State startup program that gives tax breaks to companies who comes to the SUNY campuses. It sets up and create new jobs. More recently, we tied up with CUNY system to do the I-Core program, which I think you all must be aware that the I-Core program is a really good way for students and faculty members to do the market research and understanding if there is a market for your product and things like that. So these are the activities that university should be doing more for the whole community, and in fact we are gearing up on that. The incubator space is also something new for us. It helps student entrepreneurs to come and rent a desk and then at the same time be a part of the entire structure of startup just by having a desk or you could even be a virtual member and not even have a desk. Be a virtual member of the incubator space and you'll still be a part of the ecosystem. At the same time, we also have been very active working with faculty members, getting more faculty members interested. One of my interests has been to push more technology disclosures and patent filing and things like that. And we also get support from the entire SUNY Research Foundation also. They also run a statewide SUNY incubation program that we are a part of, but we also have access to that in terms of technology translation and things like that. So we started seeing some really good result in the last couple of years. One example I would say, and maybe we'll get a chance to discuss more on that, is a really good collaboration that we have built between our science chemistry department, the New York State police crime lab. Professor Igor Lenn is working on. He has a spin-off company called Supermetric that is using a spectroscopy technique to do blood testing, looking at the stain in the blood and increasing the speed at which the forensic lab, New York State Forensic Lab, can use. That technology has gained a lot of interest from across the country because of the backlog of all the cases that the police departments have problems. So that's one example of a really good startup company that in the space that came from the university that's moving forward towards commercialization. I'll stop here and we'll talk more. This we are really growing in the space, and I'll add a few more other things that we've just started doing as we discuss further.
Terrific. Let's turn our focus a little bit from some of our academic partners to some of our industry partners. And Kim, let me turn to you. You know, AngioDynamics has been a long time pillar in the region's life sciences industry segment, certainly anchoring what many refer to as Catheter Valley, the state's leading concentration of stent and device manufacturers, kind of nestled into the Queensbury, Glens Falls region. Tell me a bit about where AngioDynamics is these days, and how you guys fit into the larger region.
Yeah, no, thank you for having us here today. First, it's exciting to hear, especially from the institutions, what you're doing in your local communities. So, it's got my wheels turning. But, Angio has a very rich history in this region. We were founded in 1988, really innovative, life-changing device manufacturing. Our spectrum has certainly broadened from our original catheters and what we were manufacturing back in the 80s and into the 90s. We're now into a really exciting MedTech space. We're still in the device market, certainly, but we're moving into that tech space. And this region remains, the roots of where we not only began, but where we also see our future. So in recent history, we have done a few different moves in shutting down some manufacturing in some other countries, also other states, and relocating them back to our roots here in upstate New York. And a lot of that speaks to the talent, the dedication, the resources that we have in this region, that not only AngioDynamics, but there's a lot of other companies that are in our life sciences arena that see the same value we do, and we remain committed to what we're doing here. Now, that's not to say we are a global company. We sell products globally. We do a lot of different innovative technology plays in a lot of different regions of the world. Some of their needs are very different than what we have here in upstate New York, but we are very mindful of our roots here and wanting to maintain what we have. Again, going back to that, just the abundance of talent that still remains in this region. I personally grew up in the Finger Lakes region in New York. I've lived all over the world, and I transplanted myself and my family back here about 25 years ago, and have had the great fortune of working with some tremendous talent that have come out of many of the institutions that we're just hearing about. And I heard this morning from a gentleman from HVCC, and I personally have hired a lot of people that have come through those incubator projects, through those schools. Like I said, a ton of talent here, and we may remain committed to what's going on in this region.
Thank you. Speaking of local roots and global reach, that turns me to you, Jamie, at Curia. Global's part of your name. And your name used to be Albany Molecular Research Institute. So we have both kind of your history and your future. Talk to us a little bit about Curia. What's your space and what's your connection to this region?
Sure, Wayne, thanks, and appreciate the chance to talk to everybody about a little bit more about Curia. And so Curia supports customers, mainly in pharmaceutical space and biotechnology space, to get ideas to market, right? So to go from curiosity to cure, so to speak. So customers come to us with a indication, right? They might have a hit in terms of a drug candidate to go through, and we can really help them all the way through the drug discovery process up to the point of making metric ton scale drug substance, all the way to the drug product, sterile fill and finish in one of our facilities. We've been in the Capital District since 1991. Our founder and initial CEO, Tom D'Ambra, came out of Sterling and started us here. It was his home. I'm sitting in Albany, right? And like Wayne said, although we're a global company now, we have 29 sites around the world. Like to say that the sun never sets on Curia anymore. We are really still New York State at heart. Been a part of MedTech for, I think, almost from the beginning. I've been here most of my career. I've been part of MedTech for most of my career while I've been here. It's something that Curia is passionate about. We have a large expansion happening at our Rensselaer facility, which is in Rensselaer, New York. We have still our corporate office that I'm sitting in currently. That's in Albany, New York, right in the western part of Albany. So this is a big part of who we are in our DNA.
And Kim and Jamie, while we're talking about the region, I'm curious to get your perspectives from some folks in the industry. One of course, the premier life sciences companies in the Albany region is Regeneron. Now, one of the kind of pieces of Regeneron that I always find important for folks looking to build, expand, or grow their life sciences industry in New York State is if you take a look at Regeneron, their headquarters are down in Tarrytown, really just in kind of the northern end of the metropolitan region, and yet they're doing virtually all of their advanced manufacturing in Rensselaer, in the capital region, in large measure because of the capacity, because of the workforce, because of the lower cost of doing business. I'm wondering if the two of you could comment a bit from your perspectives on, and I'm not asking you to be, an apologist for New York State, but at the same time, often kind of the rap on New York is it's a high cost, high tax place to do business. And yet we're seeing companies like yours grow and expand in this region. What allows that to happen?
Jamie, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure, no problem. So I think a good partnership with local representation, with state representation, good collaborations with all the different let's say agencies that kind of govern our pieces of business, so to speak, so that we have a good relationship. Like I said, we've just started we're about a year into a large expansion in Rensselaer, which has been going very, very well. We believe in New York State that we wouldn't be doing that if we didn't. We have a great talent pool here to pull from a lot of the local universities. A good core for us in terms of folks who can work as operators, all the way to analytical chemists, all the way to supply chain folks, and we kind of need the gamut as we run our facility in Rensselaer.
Yeah, I would only add to that. I can echo exactly what Jamie's saying. I mean, we've been able to take advantage of a lot of the different resources. But I think the other benefit that companies like Angio have in this region is as we mature as a company and hire great talent, that talent tells other talent that we're a terrific place to live. And part of what we believe at Angio is that our culture also drives a lot of our success. You're only as successful as the people that you have working with you. And when those people can also bring in additional like-minded, driven talent that we're looking for, that's really some of the keys to our success as well.
Kesh and Lenn, let me turn to you guys in your academic perches. And while we're talking about RAPs, sometimes the rap on higher education is that it hasn't been nimble enough or focused enough on both pipeline issues and commercialization opportunities. What can you tell us at your institutions has allowed there to be a greater emphasis on building businesses or spinning out basic research into commercial products?
Yeah, I think it's a very good point. Historically, universities have not been very reactive to what you mentioned just now. I remember at the time when I was at University of Buffalo many years back. I came here 6 months back, and I spent about 8 years at the University of Illinois, where entrepreneurship is really big, in the sense that they formed companies like YouTube, PayPal, and all this company AMD. They all came from the university. They had a huge culture, but before that, when I was in Buffalo, there was very little infrastructure to do startups in the beginning. In the early 2000s, when I did my first startup, it was very difficult to do licensing agreement, which was the biggest hurdle. Is that there is a gap between what university expected an inventor to give you versus inventor's idea of what an IP's value is. Correct? Because for the inventor, they know that the IP, by the time they go and raise money and do, it's much later that you see the profit. Universities used to think that IP, wow, I'm giving away IP is going to make millions. Well, you know that a very few IP eventually make business. So there was disconnect. And I do remember over 10-year period of time when I was in Buffalo. In fact, Buffalo, changed its culture. They really became much more proactive. And then I had a startup in the space of medical robotics, which I commercialized for Da Vinci Robot, where I worked with Russell Park Cancer Institute, and we jointly did a company, and we had very tough negotiations, and the university actually really helped us do that. And in fact, in some way, it became a model for many people in Buffalo to now start going forward to request IP and licensing agreement, because there was a model now in place which was quite reasonable. And in Albany, when I came here, I've been seeing that as a whole, the university is slowly implementing a process by which, if you see a good technology, whether it's funded through NIH or whether it is coming through some other funding mechanism, then how can we guide the faculty to go through the process of starting a company? And as a university, we think that the university succeeds if the translation succeeds over the time, and it can take sometimes years and years before you actually see the value. And so that change of perspective is something that everyone in the campus must know. And so we have been spending significant time in encouraging faculty member to do technology disclosure, which is really the first step for us to know that there is something that is happening which may have an IP value. And then showing them how can you start a company, how do you find students who can help them be an executive in the company, because very often faculty members won't leave the job and be a CEO. You need to encourage their PhD students to take a leadership, and then help them through the process of getting angel, write the SBIR grants, so on and so forth. So we're building this culture, and I think that we are seeing results. But in the next few years, our goal is to actually have 4 times as many companies come out of a university than it did last year. We have typically 5 or 6 companies per year. We want to see 20, 25 companies at any given time being supported, funded, and in the process of translation, either licensing, acquisition, and or getting VC funding, and so on and so forth.
Lenn, does that correspond with your efforts up at Clarkson?
Yeah, I think Clarkson. I've been here for about a year and a half now, and the university that I came from was more of was more focused on education, some research. But here at Clarkson, especially within the School of Engineering, they're highly focused on research. And we actually have built within the university a center that helps both students, right, undergrads, graduate students, and faculty develop patents if they have the technology that they want to patent, and also the business support behind starting a company, which I was like blown away by as far as, when I got here, that it existed and the culture existed, and that it was not only available for faculty, but was also available at the undergrad level as well. So we have students, who are, juniors and seniors walking into the, into that business office, the entrepreneurial office, and saying, "Hi, I'm a junior and I have an idea, and I've been doing some research, and I wanna, see if I can get a patent on it, and I want to, see if you can help me think about developing a company." So that culture exists here, and it's a fun culture to be a part of. So that's what I can say on that front.
Yeah. And Brett, Stephanie, I think of the two of you really as kind of at the front lines of nursing along, helping to birth and grow. Brett, for you, an entrepreneurial skill set or spirit among students. Stephanie, for you, really taking an infant company and incubating and accelerating and move that along. I'd love to hear from the two of you. What are the particulars of helping a company, helping an individual grow into a business creation paradigm?
Yeah, Stephanie, would you like to go first?
No, you can go first.
Okay. So I want to go back to what Kesh and what Lenn mentioned, and they use the word culture, and I think that's a fantastic way to maybe segue into what I'm going to say, because changing culture takes time. But to understand that there is that entrepreneurial mindset of people saying, okay, is there IP that we could commercialize, whether it's even a non-exclusive license, right? How can somebody look at it differently and say, look, that's not the original intent for the inventor, but what about using that? That's where real innovation happens, and really from an interdisciplinary perspective. That's tough to do. You can do that within, I would say, a quote unquote classroom setting, but it does take time and also to understand how to navigate that. I get excited looking at the next 10 years because I think that's not only what this region needs, and I think people have to be patient, but that's really the pace at which innovation's going, where you have, okay, we'd love for 15, 20, 25 new companies to come out every year regionally. And I appreciate the bullish perspective, because I'm very much in that camp as well, because we do have that stockpile of talent. But those rails are in place. How long can we give it? How can we nurture that environment to take an idea to really market? I think only 2%, USPTO, I think, put that latest number, a little north of 2% of all patents that are actually commercialized. But if you look at the overall volume of patents, it's quite a bit. But getting there is going to, it's going to take a group effort as well. The other half of that question, I'll defer to Stephanie, is that entrepreneurial mindset to embed within the science, research, and engineering community does take time as well. And that's one of the intentions that we're trying, really one of the larger objectives with this program, and what we're trying to do is say, hey, you're trying to change the world, which is fantastic. You're brilliant, which is fantastic. How do you build that team? How can you help the market realize that your invention has value economically? That's really where there's a little bit of an uphill battle, so to speak. But I think that can happen here with not only some strong industry partners, but within academia as well. So it's me saying, hopefully, exercise some patience, but I'm very bullish, and I'd like to be part of that. And I think, a lot of people are seeing what can happen, but it'll take a little bit of time.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
so
I was just gonna say, I totally agree with sort of everything that's been said before about the culture change. I think it's important, and I think it is happening, but it is going to take time for sure.
Well, so let me kind of hold you on that point a little bit, Stephanie, because one of the challenges, of course, is, as everybody on this call certainly knows, and as I suspect most of our audience knows, growing a life science company, it has an incredibly long, in many cases, runway. If it were only as easy as creating the next terrific app, I suppose more people would be in that space. You're really in the weeds, if you will, on moving healthcare innovation into the commercial space. Talk about a little bit, if you can, about the particular resources and assets that you have at an incubator like yours that help companies make that transition.
Sure. Yeah, I think, in terms of, I'll start with one of our biggest challenges, which I think is something that everyone's kind of commented on, which is a lot of our ideas are coming from clinicians, medical students, full-time faculty, full-time researchers. And they have these great ideas, but they also have a full-time job. And especially in the case of the clinicians and the med students, they don't have time to also be running a company or ramping up into creating an actual commercial entity. And so for us, a big part of the challenge is trying to connect with others in the area who can help, trying to build a team that they can be the technical lead, but not be the CEO, because they just don't have that time. So that's something that we work very hard to do, but also, frankly, it's difficult. It is difficult to find people willing to help with very early stage biotech startups. It is a long runway. It costs a lot of money. There's a lot of regulatory hurdles. So that is something that we are constantly working on, trying to help and encourage and move along. And then I think within the sort of the weeds of what we're doing and things that we can offer, we do help quite a bit with the SBIR process in terms of trying to match someone who is interested in applying with a clinician or a researcher at AMC who could assist with something like a clinical trial. We do run a lot of clinical trials for startups. There's a couple ongoing right now. Albany Med has the distinction of being the only academic medical center in this region and being the level 1 trauma center for the entire North Country and Capital Region as well. So we have a lot of specialties, and we also have a culture of just medical education, which is a very nice culture to have here at AMC. So they understand there are lots of learners in lots of different areas, and they're very supportive of that educational process. So I think all of that together is sort of a unique position for Albany Med and the BACC to be in, because we have that sort of encouragement from education. We're really trying to build the pipeline. Again, we're a lot of years out, but we're training our doctors, we're training our clinicians, our nurse anesthetists, our everyone to really try to think entrepreneurially and innovatively in the healthcare space.
So Jamie and Kim, let me send the focus back your way, because we've listened to really Lenn and Kesh and Stephanie and Brett talking about how they're sending out discoveries, they're creating entrepreneurs. There's this huge kind of pipeline of stuff that they're assembling to move out into the commercial space. Each of you, from your perches, of course, spend most of your time working and worrying about your own particular business set. And I'm wondering where the connections could be, should be. What are the opportunities for companies like AngioDynamics and Curia to connect with and to carry on some of the innovations that are coming out of our regional academic institutions?
Kim, do you want to go first this time?
Sure. So it's interesting because as I'm listening, I'm thinking about the things that we've done in the past with RPI, the things that we were doing with Albany Med and a lot of the others on this panel. So I think that part of the responsibility, it's a two-way street. The responsibility lies on AngioDynamics to offer programs for students, internships, co-ops, those types of opportunities that give them meaningful experience in how we run our business. Now, Angio is not a startup. We're not necessarily on that end of it, but we are very innovative. And so we're always trying to focus in on what is the next thing we could or should be doing to serve our patients and our communities better, to provide high quality healthcare solutions to them. And where are we going to get that talent from? So with RPI, for example, I can point to half a dozen or more of our R&D staff that have come directly out of RPI specifically, that have multiple patents attributed to them to date and do a lot of our really top-notch innovation work out of our incubator projects in R&D that are contributing to the future of Angio. And then we're working with institutions like Albany Med, Cleveland Clinic, a lot of others across the country and across the world, really, to help us to do clinical studies and to prove out our effectiveness, the effectiveness of our products to treat certain types of disease states. Our oncology business has huge pushes in those arenas, in our PRESERVE study, in our DIRECT study, and a lot of other things that are going on, working directly with those institutions to make sure that those things are actually coming to fruition. We're gathering data, we get scientific facts, get indications, not only by the FDA, but other regulatory bodies global. So those are two good examples of how we're working with our educational institutions as well as our medical institutions to make sure we're pushing our innovation forward.
If I can add just a little bit, one of the things that I think comes up a lot when we start talking about entrepreneurship is that folks think automatically startup, right? They think startup, they think person creating their own company, going at it that way. I think we think about it a little differently, right? Entrepreneurs belong in our business, right? You can be an interior entrepreneur within Curia, kind of grow the business. Let's say I'm a graduate of SUNY Albany MBA program, right, in entrepreneurship, right? And my intent was always to stay at Curia. And so what it does is it gives scientists, which, when and other board members and maybe some of the folks who've heard me speak before, though I kind of have a soapbox of teaching scientists about business, right? It's something that I think lacks kind of in our education process as a chemist or a biologist or an engineer, getting exposed to some of those different skill sets. And while, it takes a little time for us to convince a scientist that they do need to go to a business class because they say, oh, I can figure it out by myself. It's something they can figure out, but they need to go get taught how to do it, right? And so the more we can do that, the earlier on we can do that with folks, the more successful they are going to be in business, and the more that we can grow the whole area in terms of success.
Yes.
Can I just add to what Jamie and Kim said? I think it encapsulates a lot of what we're saying, is that I'm really encouraged to hear that the thinking is there, because the entrepreneurial process, sometimes loosely referred to as entrepreneurship, it's the same process, whether within or without. And that's when I go back to the comment about give us a decade, people are just like, well, that's too long. And you're just like, no, if you're planting that seed now, especially for folks, early and mid-career professionals within industry, and then this next cycle of grads, whether on the undergrad, master's, or PhD level, that's important, not only for workforce development, but for innovation and idea development. Because if you take that process, entrepreneurship just it just means you don't have the same financial net as you do with entrepreneurship, and that's R&D in a lot of ways. But the thinking, which Kim and Jamie hit on, I think super important, and that's why again I'm bullish on what we can do, but also turning out those grads that are thinking that way. So thanks.
I'm wondering too, and I'd open this up to anybody. Many of you, in fact, I think in some ways all of you in your comments have talked about changing cultures, about the rapid pace of change. I think I've heard from you. I don't want to put words in any of your mouths, but I think I heard from all of you a sense that there's a palpable sense of a change of culture in the region, perhaps across upstate New York or in other places. And I often think, and poor Jamie's heard me say this a bunch of times, and some others of you may also have, and I'll pick on another one of our innovation regions. But as somebody who has really spent his entire life in upstate New York, I always looked at Rochester and that region and said, it's bulletproof, right? Rochester has Eastman Kodak. We will always need film. Rochester has Bausch and Lomb. We will always need ground glass lenses. Rochester has Xerox, and we will always need paper copies. And interestingly, the digital revolution came along, and it turns out we didn't need film in the same way that we thought we did, or copies, or ground glass lenses. And I often wake up at night worried that, on the one hand, companies like AngioDynamics or Curia will decide to leave upstate New York. At the same time, I don't worry that the University at Albany or Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute or Albany Med or Clarkson will leave Albany and Troy and Potsdam, right? And I'm curious to know, kind of throwing that bit of a mess at you all, does that resonate in some ways? How does a changing culture allow us to, on the one hand, be nimble enough to pivot where the industry is headed, and at the same time establish the kind of connections that are necessary to grow an industry? Lenn, let me throw that one at you. It's a broad question, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I would say for us up here, it's important, and I think there has been some, but not as much as not as much as I want. Right? There's been collaboration, but the collaboration has been more transactional with certain healthcare institutions up here specifically that I'm working with, and now we're in the process of truly trying to develop relationships, which I think is different. A relationship is different than a transactional relationship, right? Where we're sitting down and talking about what are true needs and what, how we can partner to meet certain needs, or to look 10 years down the road and say, if you're doing this and we're doing this, how do we come together to create a better environment? And for us in the healthcare piece, it's about about trying to find new things, right, from an entrepreneurial point of view, from a healthcare point of view, but also from an entrepreneurial point of view of how do we create an infrastructure that is supportive of people wanting to be in the North Country, right? Which is just as important, because if we sit down and say, it's going to be 20 weeks before you can see a dentist, right? People are going to like, I'm happy where I am, right? But if you can sit down and shorten that timeline and really make the healthcare system more robust, then it develops a better infrastructure. So some of the things we're looking at innovation is how do we partner with healthcare institutions here to make the healthcare system more robust, utilize some of the human resources that we have as far as our students to possibly get real world experiences in the healthcare institution prior to the time that they leave, even our undergrad, right? And I think that's some of those things. The big thing is truly developing interrelated partnerships rather than transactional partnerships, and I think that goes both from our point of view in the health sciences to some of the things that I know the School of Business and the engineering group is working on as well, is how do we truly make those relationships that are more than just transactional.
Well, listen, on that note, I'm afraid we've kind of pushed the end of our envelope. I wanna thank each of you for participating today. Kesh, Stephanie, Lenn, Brett, Jamie, Kim, thank you so much. I hope our audience has gotten some insights from this conversation. We will send around as well to our audience contact information and an ability with some websites to connect with the companies. We believe strongly in the power of connectivity and collaboration. It's one of the things that is on our mission statement here at MedTech. We want to thank today's panelists. Thank again our partners at the Center for Economic Growth. And in our last hour, starting at noon, we're going to introduce you to 4 cutting-edge innovators in the life sciences who are building businesses in the capital region in the North Country. One of them a graduate of the BACC, one of them in residence up at Clarkson University. I think really some terrific stories about what it's like to be a part of the innovation ecosphere. With that, again, my thanks to one and all, and we will talk to you soon. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.